So let's dive into today's Montreal Canadiens festivities with an introduction that's a lot more positive. This is actually from a few days ago. In fact, it's from the regular season. But the reason we are bringing it up now is because, firstly, there was an article written about it, which we can screenshot the quotes from, and secondly, I personally think that getting some positive Montreal Canadiens discourse out into the universe is a good thing to do at this time. Now, the Habs play Washington in Game 3. Bell Center's gonna be buzzing, the beers are gonna be cracking, and the folks are going to be loud. I, unfortunately, am not gonna watch a good chunk of this game. I've got commitments today. But if the Montreal Canadiens end up doing something spectacular, if there are things to talk about, you know that I'll hit y'all with the emergency vlog. Most probably coming from an empty field with some volleyball nets in the background. Probably. No guarantees, though. If the Canadiens play a game that's not really noteworthy and it's not really all too interesting to talk about, then I guess we can skip it. And I know it feels kind of bad to say that because, you don't ever want to skip a playoff game. But, I don't know. You can kind of tell where the tea leaves are going if the Canadiens have an uninspired Game 3 at home. However, if there is something to talk about, then we will talk about it. I just won't be here at home being able to watch every single detail and pay attention to everything like I normally do. So, with that in mind, let's manifest some positive vibes here by talking about some positive Canadian stories. And in particular, we are going to dive into a radio clip on BPM Sports Talk Radio from 10 days ago. This will be linked in the description. It's a 50-second clip of the BPM Sports Talk show, which features guest Martin Leclerc, who goes out there and talks about how Habs scouts told him that in a normal context, Ivan Demidov would surely have been chosen first in the most recent draft. And that is kind of a ridiculous thing to say now, isn't it? Habs scouts telling Leclerc that, Ivan Demidov, if things were normal, if all the information was available and ready to access, then Ivan Demidov would have gone first overall. This is really interesting. Now let's dive into this article from earlier this morning by Elias Adim that pretty much has the quotes from the Leclerc video, and the reason I'm using this article is because the video on BPM is in French, and, it's kind of difficult to do things on the fly here. This is the comment that Martin Leclerc makes on the show. If the territory over there had been open to scouts as usual, and if everyone had equal access to Ivan Demidov's game last season, he probably would have been the first person selected in the draft. This is all information that Canadian scouts apparently told Leclerc. They told him under normal circumstances Demidov likely would have been selected first overall. The veteran Radio Canada journalist also mentioned that it's very likely the Habs scouts didn't have all the information themselves, and he wonders if that's the reason Ivan Demidov may not have been their top choice either. In the end, the San Jose Sharks, who held the first overall pick last year, chose Macklin Celebrini, who had a sensational rookie season and is a Calder Trophy contender alongside of Lane Hudson. But credit must also go to the Chicago Blackhawks, Anaheim Ducks, and especially the Columbus Blue Jackets for passing on the young forward wearing 93, who might just become the best Canadiens forward in a long, long time. Now, that might be a little bit hyperbolic to say towards the end, but I think it's also kinda accurate there. Demidov has that potential. People going out there and saying he's the best Habs forward prospect. Heck, best Habs prospect since Guy Lafleur. And whilst that is a tall task, a tall order to be compared to, it's one of these things where it's like, considering the point record and considering the production, the guy outscored Kaprizov, and he did it whilst being given incredibly limited minutes. He probably has a sky-high ceiling. Franchise medium potential in the NHL video games, in my opinion at least. Screw the elite high rating that they gave him. I think he deserves to be a little bit better than that. Anyways, Ivan Demidov being a potential first overall guy in the 2024 NHL Draft, that is absolutely something that would have caused a stir had you talked about it last year. I'll go out here on the record and say this. Macklin Celebrini in 2024 was always going to go first overall. Not necessarily because he was always the best player and he'll always continue to be the best player from the draft class, but just because of the story. The guy was the first overall touted pick for years. Everybody's talking about, oh, he's also from Vancouver. It's like a Connor Bedard situation here. He's in the NCAA and he won the Hobey Baker and he did all this crazy stuff and everybody was saying he was going to be first overall the entire season. People weren't necessarily thinking that Celebrini would be a Bedard or a McDavid level talent, but he was better than, let's say, other first overall, second overall guys like Matty Beniers, Adam Fantilli. Macklin Celebrini was above that caliber in the eyes of many prospect analysts. So because there was so much conversation about Celebrini, there was so much to like out of his game. He was poised, he was mature, he was a center, he was a two-way capable guy, he can score points, he's creative, he's strong on his stick, he's everything you need a number one center to be. That's why he went first overall. That's why he was supposed to go first overall. He was a Hobey Baker winner in his freshman season. That's only been accomplished however many times by a freshman. Paul Kariya, Jack Eichel, Adam Fantilli, Macklin Celebrini. Is that it? Is that 4 times? I mean, just based off of what we knew back then, and even what we had seen this season in the NHL, there was never going to be a world where Macklin Celebrini wasn't taken first overall. But Ivan Demidov being taken second, maybe even challenging for first in the same way that you could debate that Mishkov was challenging Bedard for first overall, years before the 2023 NHL Draft where they were inevitably taken first and 7th. If you want to twist my arm and say that there's a conversation to be had about whether or not Demidov should have been taken first, or he does have a higher ceiling, or he is somebody that can have a better career than Celebrini, I'm all for that conversation. I don't think it's unrealistic. However, to say that, yeah, if everybody knew what Demidov was like back in 2024, he probably would have been taken first. We don't know that. Honestly, I don't think that's the case just because Celebrini and the star power behind his name was so high, but I understand the point that the scouts are making here, that Ivan Demidov was drafted out of the MHL. He wasn't even taken out of the top or the second tier Russian league. He was taken out of the Russian Junior League. You know how many guys get taken at the top of the NHL draft from the Russian Junior League? Not many. And he didn't really do much in the KHL in his draft eligible year. He had 4 games played and he had 0 points. Everything that he did in the KHL afterwards cemented just how good he was as a KHL product. And inevitably stepping foot into the NHL and scoring 2 points in his first period's worth of play, that's what prompted this conversation on BPM Sports Talk Radio. That's why everybody was going out there and getting all hyped up for this guy again. Not just Habs fans, but fans of literally every other NHL team were eyeing Montreal, saying, hey, that guy Demidov, he's pretty good. And unfortunately for him, he hasn't scored an NHL point since that game against Chicago, but still, there have been situations where he has looked better than others, and ultimately he is still learning. He's only played 4 NHL games. I don't think you could definitively say with any confidence that he's a better NHL player than Macklin Celebrini is right now. Celebrini is coming off of a 63-point year with 70 games. What a transition into the National Hockey League. I'm not saying that he should have gone first overall, that Ivan Demidov, but maybe long term, there is a world where Demidov gets a 100-point season, maxing out more than Celebrini does, and that debate is going to be opened up one more time. But just hearing from the radio here that apparently Canadian scouts are believing internally that Demidov should have gone first overall had all the information on him been available, that is kind of interesting. But you know, we got to get some positivity out there, so we're going to make this video and upload it, and then we're talking about the Canadiens and the Capitals Game 3. We'll talk about the pregame notes after this video commentary right here. The links to the video on BPM Sports Talk Radio's Twitter, as well as the article that we read the quotes from, they'll both be in the description for your viewing and reading pleasure. Let me know your thoughts in the comments as to whether or not Ivan Demidov should have, or even could have, gone first overall. I hope you enjoyed this Vishashral 9, and bye.